Alright, today we're going to show you how to make this little cat stove. We've used it in a few of our videos for melting down wax mostly, but it can be used to cook on. It's very simple to make, very simple to use, and really quite efficient. So the reason we call it a cat stove is because one of the main components to it is a Fancy Feast cat food tin. So this is what we're going to be using for the base of our stove. We're also going to use a small can, not your full-size soup can, but one of the smaller cans. You're also going to need carbon felt. It's a fireproof, fire-retardant fabric that you can get at a welding store or any of your larger hardware stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. So our first step will be cutting this fire-retardant fabric. You can see that it fits right in between these two cans. That's what we're going to be using as the wick for our stove. First thing we're going to have to do is measure the depth of this tin, cut the fabric so it is level with the top and it fits inside the can without any gaps or without any bunching up. So we'll do that first. Again, if you don't have one of these roller cutters, you can use a pair of scissors, but I would suggest getting one of these because you can use it a lot. Alright, so we've cut our strip of this felt. Next thing we need to do is cut it to length. You can see that this is too long to fit in there perfectly. And on this one, there's not really much room for gaps. So we need to make sure that two ends butt up perfectly without any overlap. So we're going to kind of measure that and cut that out right now. Alright, there we go. That's what we're looking for. A nice tight fit without any gap at that seam.
Wow!
So next thing we're going to do is cut our central piece to shape. You can see that this is going to sit inside the cat food can, but we need to cut some of the bottom off for it to fit. This one is a little bit longer than we're looking for. For the one we're making right now, we're going to cut this can so we only have about a 1/4 inch or so sticking up above the top of this cat food can. So we're going to measure how long we need to cut it and cut it down to size. We're trying to make this build fairly easy, that's why we're just using simple tools. But if you have a Dremel, that will work very well with a cutting disc. You could also use a hacksaw. Those will both cut this fairly well. But if you don't, a pair of tin snips will work very well. Alright, so there we go. We finished cutting our little can. After you cut these edges, they will be pretty sharp. So as you're working with this, just be very careful to not run your finger along the edge. After we've cut this out, what we need to do is make 4 small notches spaced out evenly along the bottom. So we're going to do just 2 right across from each other and then turn it 90 degrees and do 2 right across from each other. Your notches don't need to be very big. This is just going to let the fuel get in. You can see that notch, that's about the size we're going for. It doesn't need to be huge, just needs to be there. Alright, and there we go. We have our 4 notches in the bottom. So this may actually be the trickiest part of this build. Getting the fire felt that's wrapped around our can into our cat food tin, because it will fit tight. Now we have our official Baffoonery poking device. This will just kind of help you once you get the fabric close to fitting. it might need a little bit more persuasion to get down into that cat food tin. Looks like it's all in there. There we go. Okay, so now that we've got our little cat stove finished, we're going to talk about the fuel for this. You can use regular rubbing alcohol as long as it's the highest alcohol content you can find. What lots of people really like to use in this product, it is used to get water out of your gasoline lines in the winter. It's pretty much just alcohol, but this is what we're going to use for our fuel. So you're just going to fill up your center. Don't need to add too much, just a little bit. You'll also want to add just a teeny bit to the outer edge. Just a few drops. And as you add this to the center, it will get soaked up into this ring of fire retardant fabric, and that, like we said earlier, will act as our wick. Right, so once we have this little stove fueled up, we're just going to take our lighter, light the edge. This is the first time it's been used, so it might take a little while for it to soak up the alcohol. You can see we got our flames going. Alright, you can see that this is going really well. These stoves burn hot and are really intense once you get them going. We probably added 1 or 2 ounces of our fuel, and it's been burning for probably about 6 minutes at this point. So you can burn them for quite a while with just a little bit of fuel. Now there are a few disadvantages to using this type of stove. The main one being you can't add fuel to this once it's already lit. Because we add our fuel into the center of this stove, this flame coming out makes it impossible to add more fuel once the stove is already going. So that is one disadvantage to using this type of stove. Another disadvantage is to put it out, you either need something to smother the entire stove, or you have to just let it burn itself out. If you have a larger soup can, you can use that to put over top and smother this out, or even a soda can with one of the ends cut off. But you can't just smother it by putting something on top because the fuel is coming from down here. We have to completely enclose this entire stove to smother it. But you can see it's starting to burn itself out. The flames will get lower. You'll get some embers kind of moving around this ring down here, and that's how you know it's starting to run out of fuel. Alright, there you go. Our stove has burned out all its fuel. It's still hot, so be careful when you're handling it. Just a note, the first time you burn this, or the first maybe 2 or 3 times you burn this, this is going to be burning off residue on this can. So if you're getting lots of smoke or you're smelling some funky smells the first few times, that's just the residue on this can burning off. If you are worried about that, just let it run 1 or 2 times outside and that'll burn off all the residue. And after that, it should burn fairly clean and without too much of an odor. Well, that's how you build one of these little nifty cat stoves. If you have any more questions, comment on the video and we'll try and get those answered.